Okay, so hi everyone, welcome back to our sixth or seventh talk for today. It's my pleasure to introduce Professor Mohsen Kaboli. He leads the AI Robotics and Cognitive Vehicle Research Lab at BMW Group since 2018. He's also professor at Eindhoven University of Technology, where he leads the Embodied Interactive Perception and Robot Learning Lab. Mohsen received his PhD focusing on interactive tactile perception and learning in robotics from TUM in 2017. His research interests lie at the intersection of embodied robotics, visuo-tactile interactive perception, learning and control, with applications ranging from mobile robotics to robotic grasping and manipulation and human-robot interaction and collaboration. He has received numerous awards, such as the Best European PhD Thesis Prize in Tactile Robotics. He was also finalist for the George Chirel PhD Award and the ICAR 2023 Outstanding Paper Award in Perception. Looking forward to your talk.
Yeah, thank you very much for the nice introduction and invitation. There was very nice talks basically today, and we are a little bit different because we are not using simulation that much. We are basically working with a real robot, and we have our own basically problems. So for me, when we are talking about let's say the autonomous system or intelligent system from a very, very high level, I'm considering several blocks, means the system needs to have a multimodal sensation and perception, interaction, learning, decision-making, and planning at the same time, you know, as a complete systems. So I've seen many groups basically are working only on the learning part. They are using different methodologies, you know, RL and so on. But for me, it's a bit different, because for me, if we will not have a complete systems, so we need to deal with many data, you know, millions and millions of data. And especially when you're working with the robot and different sensing modalities, you will not be able to collect the data. For example, using the hand, using a touch, you know, if you slide your hand on a rough object after 10 times, start bleeding. So you cannot collect that much data, right? Like a vision, because with the vision, you can have millions of data and nothing can happen, right? So this one was my interest to find out how the humans basically intelligence develops. I have been in Japan, and we were recording data from the human fetus. So to find out what is the first sense in a humans, we cannot see, we cannot hear it, but the brains will get developed based on the body movements. And the body movements, basically the information comes from cutaneous information and proprioceptive information as well. And based on that, our brain start getting developed, and it gets folded, basically. An interesting thing is here, even there are some syndromes or diseases can be recognized based on this kind of a movement before the birth. So this was our motivation in order to develop a baby robot. This is a Nabi, is a 9-month-old robot. And the robot, this robot can see and can hear also the objects when the object was moving, means sound localization as well. But if you see, the robot cannot really move. You know, it's a kind of a robotic movement because the sense of touch is missing here. So the robot, even here, the baby robot cannot even differentiate the body part from the word. It can be extended, for example, the word can be extended off his body, or can be, for example, something completely different. Let's move on here. So what we basically find out from this study was the sense of touch plays a very important role in our daily life in a human, from grasping an object, manipulation, realizing the object's properties, whole body interaction, and social interaction, and also the self-awareness. If you see, this is you, this is not because of the vision, because of the tactile. This is me. This is basically because I can differentiate my hand, you know, from the desk here. So if you see these days, there are many also the robot in the industry. This is the Amazon, this is BMW, and also there are other robots here. But if you see, still humans are working, right, in different domains. The reason is even our robot can see, for example, here the strawberry, but is not able to pick it because cannot realize the properties and can easily crush it. And what is the motivation for me, when it comes even to grasp and manipulation? It makes sense when the robot and humans, they work together, right? And one of the reasons we would like to bring also the sense of touch is the safety as well. Because the vision can fail. Even like a few years ago, someone has been killed in Volkswagen, even when working in one of these cages. Even there were many security cameras and so on. And the other thing, basically, if you see here, this is there is no vision here, and this is the grasp, and the robot can easily crush the object. And the idea why we are working in this basically pure tactile, because we want to realize what is the capability of tactile sensing in robotics, because this one has not been investigated before. And these are basically very difficult tasks in robotics because the object is transparent and deformable, and the center of mass of the object is dynamic, right? So here the robot can grasp an object, which we call it, even in human, is called reflex grasp, but is not able to manipulate because cannot basically detect sleep and correct the force regulation here. This is the method basically we have we proposed, and this is the real-time sleep detection without having any prior knowledge, and force regulation. And I think it's a correct video. Let's see what will happen then. Yeah, and if you see here, this is very difficult. In a real time, the robot make sleep estimation, detection, and force regulation, and pure tactile. There is no basically division here. And the second thing basically is if the object is very heavy, if it's easy, light is easy, right, to hold it in a hand without crushing the objects. But when the object is very heavy, there is basically two options: either to crush it, press means to apply more force, or let it go, right? But the other thing basically when it comes to the in-hand manipulation we are ignoring is the role of our arm, right, like a human. So how can we get basically hand and arm manipulation at the same time? We are using the human strategy, means when the robot realize, if you see it's shaking, right? Because it's very difficult to grasp the object without crushing the object. Is to start moving the hand in order basically to compensate the weight of the objects and the sleep, as well as basically crushing the object by moving the center of mass position here. This is basically the full body robot we have developed. This is the tactile sensing, and we call it electronic sensing here. So if you see, the robot can easily move with the hand or with the feather, right? And if you get close to the robot, will not kill you, definitely. And the idea is how to get the robot's hand and teach the robot how to write, right? Or to do the pick and place. And to have intuitive, basically, the learning here. However, there are many challenges here when it comes to the real-time processing and basically bringing both vision and tactile, which partially I will address here if I will have time. And if you see here, basically, we developed this one in our lab a few years ago. This is a multimodal tactile sensors, which has a proximity, temperature sensors, normal and shear force. We can measure it. And the idea basically for me is when you are developing any methodologies, it should work across any sensing technology, because we have different, here the tactile sensor, they measure like a shear normal force. But if you basically change the sensors, the methodology or algorithm will fail. which basically this is not our interest here. And this one was the baby robot we had with a full body and had 5,000 tactile sensors. And the idea for me, or let's say the goal was to have whole body manipulation and interaction, means when the robot is rolling over the surface, could realize the properties of the object based on the entire body. And of course, there are many challenges here, which we had to answer, basically the address. This has been published in the Science Robotics. And basically the computational part is one of the main problems. And when it comes even to the human, if you want to inspire from the humans, in human, we have two parts. We have CNS and PNS, is peripheral neural basically sensors, and also CNS, which need to be combined together in order to address the entire basically computational complexity here, which at the moment we don't have it in the robotics. So going from pure tactile to vision and tactile, I think you may heard these days about the Visuo-Tactile topics. Basically, this is a bit different than what we are doing, because usually the Visuo-Tactile these days is called, to put it in this way, the tactile sensors at the moment, which now you can see even here, they are using the cameras, they put a layer of the silicon and they call it Visuo-Tactile. For me, this is not a tactile sensor. This is a camera, it's nothing, right? So because with the reason is the tactile is action conditions. You have to have a sensor which you are interacting, you will get an information. And when it comes to the vision and tactile, and the tactile is not the slave of the vision, is not only the contact. And we need to get the tactual properties of the objects here. For example, when we are talking about the vision and tactile, the vision will give kind of a global features, like a global shape. So when it comes, for example, to the tactile, we need to know the inertia. You need to know the center of mass, stiffness, textural properties, which cannot be received via any sensor except tactile with the proper actions here. And the second thing is we do a lot in hand manipulation, but in order to get to know the objects, right, the properties. But if you see the toddlers, even by pushing, a simple push or pull can get a lot information from the object here, which we call it a simple non-prehensile manipulation, right? So we have one of my smart students who is sitting here, French one. Basically, the idea was of him basically to solve part of the manipulation problems, but using non-prehensile actions here. So if you see basically when it comes to the manipulation, we are considering very hard task, which is let's say, manipulating the objects in the clutter. So we divided the task we have at the beginning in 3 parts. The first part basically is active decluttering in order to find the target objects using both vision and tactile, and to use an active perception. So again, collecting the data, you see people are collecting a lot of millions of data, but this doesn't happen in humans because we have an active perceptions, and collecting the data is based on uncertainty reductions. So our idea is the system, the robot has to decide how much data is enough, not a human, right? So if even with 1 shot, 2 shots is enough, the robot can understand it is enough. We don't need to get more. Otherwise, we had to go, the robot can collect more and more here. And the second part basically is the shape reconstruction using both vision and tactile, especially if the object is partially occluded, right? Because you cannot see, you need to touch, right? And then the third part basically is a robust pose estimation, regardless of the object properties. If the object is transparent, non-transparent, if it's articulated, soft, or so on. This is the framework we propose. The first part basically is decluttering. The second part is object reconstruction and also the robust pose estimation. I would like basically to put some to make these areas, which we call it the vision and tactile calibration, bold, because when it comes to the simulation, vision and tactile, the calibration between vision and tactile is already given. But when it comes to the real robotics, we don't have that one. And for the human, in a real time, we are learning vision and tactile calibration, hand-eye calibration. This is the reason, even if you are simulating everything, when it comes to the reality, it doesn't work. And this part basically is the robotics experiment we have. Here we have the scene graph, which is extracted from the object in the scene. Here we have two robots where this is the panda and basically you are. We call it the shared perception here. They are working together, collaborating. And this robot can actively see basically the objects, and the other one has a tactile sensor, which is it a contactile? Or yeah, this is a contactile sensor here. This is the decluttering part, and the object, basically the robot will decide either to push, to push the object, or for example, to grasp the object in order to declutter the scene. And later on, we have an active perception. The robot actively looks into the scene to find basically to reconstruct basically the shape of the object here. And this is based on the information gain. And then there will be a part, basically, the robot cannot visually see the object if you see, these areas, which is basically more complex or is transparent, and then start touching. So then we will have both vision and tactile for object reconstruction. And again, for the tactile here is an active, is not a passive, because the robot knows where to touch, right? And how many touch sample is enough for reconstructing the object here. Okay, and this one basically is 5 minutes in this, but I have to go fast. So, and then we have here the object pose estimation, which is a real time. And then the gradual is shuffling. Basically, you will see we are able to, the robot can estimate the pose. These are and basically now we are moving also to the articulated objects here. And what we want to do, basically, this is the TRO is submitted, is the Visuo-Tactile based tracking and goal-driven manipulation of the unseen novel object here. So I will go a little bit faster this part. And if you remember, I was talking about the non-prehensile manipulation. For example, if the object is very heavy, so how we can manipulate? You cannot basically take it in your hand. And the idea is how we can estimate the properties of the objects, and the objects can be homogeneous, articulated, or heterogeneous objects, and to estimate the properties of the objects here by vision and tactile and simple, basically push here. This is the annual one. Here basically he proposed the predictive Visuo-Tactile interactive perception here. This is the story I already talked about. It is pose estimation and so on. And here the robot will decide either to push or pull the objects in order to estimate the physical properties basically here. This is the methodology we have. This is, we have basically the learning part, we have inference, and then on top there is differential dual filtering, having both prediction and update part. So here the robot will basically reconstruct the shape and decide what is the best action to take. And and when basically which action is the best, for example, the push, and then we'll decide where to push and what is the direction, which direction to push in order to estimate the properties like center of mass and so on. And here basically is the update part. And then what anyone developed here is experimental results. So I don't have time, I will not explain it that much. And this is basically the result, which basically is outperform the state of the art. And the good thing is here, what we have developed, even we didn't train it, for example, here with, if you see here, the video is not working. Yeah, it's here. Even if there will be the out of distribution, because we didn't train it with this environment, the methodology still it works here. The last part, we are working on a cross-modal perception. So if you see in a human, there is an intersection between somatosensory, visual cortex, and auditory cortex. There was a question like 2-3 hours ago, someone asked, if you want to train, we need a power plant, right? And if there will be off, the vision, how we can navigate with other sensory modality. This is very, very valid question, which we have already answered several years ago. So when it comes to the exploration, we have vision and we have a tactile, and with both vision and tactile at the same time, we are building a representative of the objects. But what other people have done so far is like vision and tactile, and then they try to put them together, which is not basically working. And if one of them is missing, and the other basically will support us to still to work. And this is from the brain, what happens. So this is the methodology we developed here, but this is the main core to bring the both vision and tactile, because they are coming completely from different domains, right? Because as I said, if you see people are using the camera-based vision, is super easy, right? Because they are treating everything with a vision, but this is not a reality. But in a human, or for example, what we are basically working on to make it more generalized, to generalize it, we will bring them together based on the loss function we have developed, and we have kind of a domain adaptation. Just this is, I will put it here. This is the, yeah, basically, this is the visual distribution, and this is a tactile. And based on the proposed loss function here, we are able to bring them together. And in case one of them is not available, the other can take the action here. Here, the system has been trained with the vision, but now we are turning off completely the camera, and we are asking the robot to use only the touch, in order to recognize the objects or reconstruct the object here. This has been also further developed, means if you look at the objects, we are able to estimate the mass or the weight of the objects like a human, right? And even the further development which is in progress. By getting to know the color or the textures, we are able to estimate the friction via the tactile, or the shape. By looking at the shape, we know the stiffness, right? And the size of the object, we know the inertia. Meaning that, for example, if you want to grasp an object, by looking at the objects, you know how to grasp and how much force you need to apply and how to manipulate it, and vice versa. If you are touching, for example, basically an object, then you can estimate the textural properties, or let's say the shape or the other properties, which we call it a cross-modal perception here. And so we are also moving to another domain, which is called the human-like perceptions. So without having any labels, it's completely unsupervised. So this is very basically the novel we are working on. And we try to use, for example, this is the sensor we have developed together with Etienne in Imperial College. And when we are talking about the textures or considering the human's hands, we are ignoring the embodiment, right? Means the fingertips or the skin will deform. And here, what we're going to do, we are trying basically to find out the role of the embodiment and the schemes when it comes to the perception as well. And when we are basically learning about the objects, learning about the properties, we want to make it completely to generalize it. Means if you change the robots, if you change the sensors, right? But the perception will remain the same always. So here is my last slide, and I would like to thank all my colleagues, my students. They have been collaborating basically on different topics. So we have also 3 fully funded PhD positions. Especially we are working on also the ONN. We are developing completely new neural networks, which is called ONN. It's different than what you have seen. And it's called oscillatory neural networks and will be on device. And we have some good results. And based on that, we are getting new students. And also we are working on counterfactual learning as well. So it means if the system makes mistakes, how can correct itself based on the counterfactual perception and learning. This is completely new. So thank you very much. If there is a question and I have time, then I'm happy to take it.